Forest Rangers, what are your unexplainable and downright creepy stories?
In 2016, my boyfriend, now my husband, and I went camping in eastern Pennsylvania. The place we decided to stop for the night was primitive. Camping was free, no cell service, barely a road, etc. We did encounter two other people. They might not factor into what happened later at all, but they were creepy, so I'll describe them. The first was a woman who had her truck off to the side of the road a little as we drove past. She had the hood open and seemed to be waiting for someone to stop and offer to help. Usually my boyfriend had no problem helping someone, but he said his time, something about her put him off. She didn't really seem like she needed help, and usually people who need help look at you hopefully as you approach. She looked like she just expected we would stop. That's what my boyfriend said anyway. I hadn't really noticed anything that strange about her. The next person came when we had chosen a spot and were setting up a fire for hot dogs. I had noticed people drive by a few times, but my boyfriend pointed out each time was the same car, and the man in the car watched us each time he passed. My boyfriend was a little uneasy about this, but we had driven around for a while before finding a place we liked. It had been raining and everything was muddy, and we wanted the driest site possible. He could have been doing the same thing. We briefly thought about moving, but the road was muddy too. If he wanted to find us, all he had to do was follow the tracks. There were some other tracks, but not many. He'd only have to backtrack a little to locate us again. He didn't come by another time, so we stayed and spent the several remaining hours before dark goofing off. No one else drove by. Whether or not those two had anything else to do with our experience, the real fear came later. We had gone to sleep in our tent, and sometime around 3 a.m., we were awoken by this very loud noise. I can't describe it very well or even remember exactly what it sounded like, but my boyfriend said it reminded him of a chain gun revving up. It was also similar to how it would sound if someone recorded a shovel being dragged over gravel and played it over a loudspeaker, is another way he described it. He jumped up and looked out the little window, but couldn't really see anything. The sound repeated itself another few times. I was too scared to speak, so my boyfriend whispered that it was probably miles off and I should go back to sleep. I didn't question this, as I figured loud sounds could be easily heard miles off. After we left, he told me it sounded like it had actually been coming from just down the road, but he didn't want to freak me out. Looking back, I probably should have wondered why he would bother to whisper if apparently the sound was far off. I was still terrified. Every little thing I heard outside sounded like someone was walking around the tent. We laid there for a while longer, when finally my boyfriend told me to get dressed because we were leaving. I got alarmed by this, and even more alarmed when he unwrapped the machete we had bought just for this trip from its plastic before opening the tent. We quickly packed up and loaded the car. I looked around for footprints that weren't our own, but despite the moon providing plenty of light, I couldn't really see. I did point out something my boyfriend hadn't noticed, though, before we got into the car. There was a beer can by our dead fire that hasn't been there before. We didn't even bring beer. While we were driving away, my boyfriend explained that he was nervous. Someone might have been trying to lure us out, so he didn't think it was a good idea to run from the tent right away. He also half expected to find out gas tank had been siphoned out, but that wouldn't have stopped us because we had a hybrid car. We joked that that would make a funny hybrid commercial. Number of brutal murders avoided by driving a hybrid. 2. We only joked because we were about shitting ourselves from fear and adrenaline even then. The rest of our trip we only stayed in well-populated campsites or got a hotel.
Ex-Ranger here. We had a group of frat boys making way too much noise. We came by twice, and at the second stop I told them, "This is your last warning. Not only is it rude for other campers to be so loud, it's exceptionally dangerous. Everyone knows that the local mountain lions are attracted to loud noises at night. And these ghost cats, as they are called, can creep right up on you without you hearing or seeing them. Whatever you do, don't leave your tent tonight. If you hear anything, don't make a sound." We went back to the station, grabbed the lion pelt from the interp center, and the night vision goggles. Head Ranger had to blow what was left of the budget at the end of the previous year. Once they were all in their tents, we crept into the campsite and made fake lion tracks everywhere. We set up the lion pelt propped up over some sticks. The other ranger got out the PA and from a distance started doing fake lion calls, slowing, getting closer. I pulled the Jeep forward like we were arriving on scene and got out, turned on my mag light, and illuminated the silhouette of the lion pelt. Because I was moving quickly, the shadow of the lion appeared to me moving. At this point, the frat boys were losing it. Jim, the other ranger, shouted, "Stay in your tents!" Logically, followed shortly by, "She's coming around at us." And then, "There's another one." And finally, "Let's get the fuck out of here." At that point, we turned off the flashlights, grabbed the lion pelt in the darkness, and jumped in the Jeep and sped off. Just after sunrise, they started peeking out of the tents. Nobody was brave enough to get out until about 8:30. When they saw all the huge paw and claw prints everywhere, they really freaked out. I was the lone recreation ranger in a small district in southern Idaho. Nearest town from guard station was about 1.5 hours away by car. After moving into the guard station, solar power was not working, and I hadn't slept for about a month due to various factors: bats in the cabin, something walking on the deck at night. The woods there always had an eerie feeling to them, unlike the southwest ponderosa forest that I was used to. About 2 months into the seasonal job, I started to hear something walking and scratching on the deck at night, perhaps even on the door. Now, this district was known for its badgers and beavers, so I didn't think much of it. When leaving the cabin at night, I always had an eerie feeling like I was being watched. One night, I was returning from my grocery run, always went on Tuesday nights, and I had a bad feeling. At the time, I did not have my shotgun in the vehicle. After stepping out of the vehicle, I looked to the right of the cabin, about 50 feet from my front door. All I could see were two eyes about 3.5 to 4 feet in the air. To say I freaked out was an understatement. I started yelling, "Get the fuck out of here!" But the eyes only crouched down and inched closer. At this point, I could tell it was a large animal of some kind. Definitely not a coyote. I tossed a piece of firewood in the general area, and the creature leaped back a bit but did not make a sound. Tossed 4 or 5 more pieces, and creature still inched forward. At this point, I fumbled with the keys. Of course, the fucking solar power was out again. I managed to get inside and grabbed my shotgun. Technically, you are not supposed to have guns in gov housing, but who the fuck lives in the hills have eyes backcountry and does not carry? Went outside, creature was bit closer. Still could not get a good look with my shitty headlamp. Loaded shotgun and continued to throw pieces of wood with one hand. Finally, the creature walked back into the brush. That night, I drank about 4 IPAs and slept with my shotgun. In the morning, trail crew came up and we found mountain lion tracks all over the porch, rocking bench and compound leading back to the creek. After that event, I always heard the rocking chair move and someone or something walking on the porch, but never found any tracks after that point. Considering that it was always muddy up there, it was weird to not find any tracks. I've been stalked by mountain lions before and never had that eerie feeling like I did in those woods.